Have you ever wanted to hold a tiny piece of a forest right in your hands? Well, you can. We decided to build a miniature world inside a big glass jar. It was an experiment to watch some of nature's most amazing and often unseen helpers at work. These helpers are called decomposers. They are the cleanup crew of the natural world. Decomposers are tiny living things, like bacteria you can only see with a microscope, fungi that look like fuzzy threads, and wriggly earthworms that burrow deep in the soil. They might seem small, but their job is incredibly big and super important for everyone. So, what exactly do these decomposers do? Their main job is to break down things that are no longer living. Think about all the fallen leaves in a forest or an apple core you might drop. Instead of piling up forever, these things magically disappear over time. That's not magic though, it's science. Decomposers are eating them. They munch and crunch on dead plants and animals, turning them back into simple, useful stuff. This process is called decomposition, and it's like nature's very own recycling program. It's happening all around us all the time, even when we can't see it. Our mission was to capture this amazing process in our jar. We wanted to see it happen up close. By sealing everything inside, we could create a small, self-contained ecosystem. An ecosystem is like a neighborhood where plants, animals, and the environment all work together. Our jar would become a special home for our decomposer team, giving us a front-row seat to one of nature's most fantastic shows. It's a way to understand how nature never wastes anything. Every fallen leaf and every tiny creature has a part to play in the grand cycle of life, and we were about to find out how. The idea of watching things rot might sound a bit yucky, but it's actually fascinating. It's a story of transformation. It's about how old things become new things. The dead leaves and old fruit peels we planned to put in our jar weren't just rubbish, they were a feast for our decomposers. This experiment would help us see how nature's recyclers turn yesterday's waste into tomorrow's treasure. We were ready with our gloves and our magnifying glass to get a closer look at these tiny but mighty workers and the incredible job they do for our planet every single day. To begin our amazing experiment, we first needed to gather all the right ingredients for our jar world. It felt a bit like baking a cake, but for worms and microbes. We started with a large clear glass jar so we could see everything happening inside. The first layer we added was a handful of small pebbles at the very bottom. This layer helps with drainage, making sure the soil doesn't get too soggy. Next, we carefully spooned in a thick, lovely layer of damp soil that we collected from a garden. This soil was dark and rich, and we knew it was already full of millions of tiny, invisible decomposers like bacteria. On top of the rich soil, we started adding the food for our decomposers. This was the fun part. We tore up some old brown autumn leaves into small pieces. We also added some kitchen scraps, like a few squishy bits of banana peel, some apple cores, and a couple of green lettuce leaves. This mix of brown materials like the dry leaves and green materials like the fresh fruit peels would give our decomposers a balanced diet. It was like creating a delicious buffet for the tiniest creatures on Earth, and we layered it all up like a colorful, earthy lasagna. Now, it was time to introduce the star players of our show, the earthworms. We gently placed a few wriggly earthworms on the very top of our layered mixture. Earthworms are brilliant decomposers because you can actually see them working. They are fantastic diggers, and we knew they would soon start tunneling through the layers, mixing everything up. As they burrow, they eat the soil and the decomposing waste, and their poo, called worm castings, is super rich in nutrients that help plants grow. They are like little plows and fertilizer factories all rolled into one. Finally, we gave our new world a little sprinkle of water to make sure it was nice and moist, but not soaking wet. Decomposers need water to live and work, just like we do. Then, we sealed the jar by putting the lid on tightly. This trapped all the air, moisture, and of course, our decomposers inside. Our tiny ecosystem was now complete. We placed the jar on a windowsill where it would get some light but not direct, hot sunlight. Now, all that was left to do was watch, wait, and wonder what would happen inside our sealed glassy globe. In the first few days, not much seemed to happen, but if you looked very closely, you could see our earthworms getting busy. They started to wiggle their way down from the top, disappearing into the darker layers of soil. They were exploring their new home, creating little tunnels as they went. The colorful layers of leaves and fruit peels we had so carefully arranged began to get mixed up. It was as if tiny gardeners were already at work, tilling the soil and getting everything ready. The inside of the jar also started to get a bit steamy. with little water droplets forming on the glass, showing that the water cycle was starting. After about a week, we started to notice some real changes. The bright green lettuce leaves had turned into a dark, slimy mush. The yellow banana peel was developing dark brown and black spots, and it looked much softer than before. This was the work of the invisible decomposers, the bacteria and fungi. We even saw some white fuzzy mold starting to grow on a piece of the apple core. This mold is a type of fungus, and it was spreading its tiny thread-like roots called hyphae into the food to break it down. The jar started to have a very earthy smell, like a forest floor after it has rained. As the weeks went by, the great disappearing act truly began. The larger pieces of leaves and peels shrank more and more each day. It was incredible to watch them slowly vanish, as if by magic. The worms continued their tireless work, tunneling up and down, pulling bits of leaves down into the soil with them. The contents of the jar became darker and more uniform in color. What was once a distinct layered mix was now turning into a single, dark, crumbly material. This new material is called humus, and it's what makes soil so rich and healthy for plants. By the end of the month, you could hardly recognize what we'd first put in the jar. Almost all the fruit peels and lettuce leaves were completely gone. Only the toughest bits of the dry leaves remained, but even they were broken into tiny fragments. The soil level in the jar had dropped slightly as the decomposers had compacted everything down. The inside of the jar no longer smelled of rotting fruit, but of fresh, clean earth. We had successfully watched nature's cleanup crew turn waste into wonderful, rich soil, completing their amazing recycling mission right before our very eyes. Watching our little jar world transform was so much more than just a cool science experiment. It showed us the incredibly important job that decomposers do for our entire planet. Imagine if there were no decomposers. Every leaf that ever fell from a tree, every animal that ever died, and every fruit that ever dropped to the ground would just stay there. Our forests and fields would be buried under huge piles of dead stuff. Decomposers are nature's essential recyclers, and without them, the whole system would grind to a halt. They are the unsung heroes of every ecosystem. These tiny workers don't just get rid of waste, they turn it into treasure. As we saw in our jar, decomposers break down dead material and release all the good things stored inside it, like nutrients and minerals. These nutrients are then returned to the soil. This makes the soil fertile and full of everything that new plants need to grow strong and healthy. So, when a new seed sprouts in the forest, it can get all its food from the soil that was made rich by the decomposers. It's a perfect, continuous circle. Things die, decomposers recycle them, and new life grows. This amazing cycle of life and death is vital for the health of our planet. Healthy soil, rich in nutrients from decomposition, can grow healthy forests. These forests, in turn, provide homes for animals, clean our air, and give us beautiful places to explore. Everything is connected. The work of a tiny bacterium or a single earthworm in the soil has a huge impact on the health of the entire forest above it. They are the foundation upon which all life on land is built, quietly working beneath our feet to keep the world running smoothly. So, the next time you walk through a park or a forest, think about the trillions of tiny decomposers working silently under the ground. They are keeping the soil healthy, helping plants grow, and cleaning up the world. Protecting them is just as important as protecting big animals like pandas or whales. We can help them by avoiding harmful chemicals on our land and by composting our own food scraps, creating our own little decomposition factories. By looking after these wriggly, fuzzy, and microscopic workers, we are helping to protect our forests, our farms, and our whole beautiful world for the future.